global level. Of course, the data in the North American part is not much, so they have not given, but more the color, more is the intensity. Now, basically, of course, African nations are the most severely affected as far as the malnutrition is concerned. But then, if you look at Asia, India is also in the alarming zone, right? And there are 4 major types of deficiencies are there. One for protein related deficiency, then iron, zinc and vitamin A. And of course, iodine is also another trait which is also severely, humans are severely affected through iodine, and you know iodine fortification is a major program going on in many countries across the world. So, the point here is where we stay, that is our country, that India is also having a major prevalence of deficiencies as far as the nutrition are concerned. Now, if you look at the data, 2 billion people worldwide are malnourished, 820 million people are undernourished. Now, here I am to clarify, malnutrition includes 3 major components. One is undernutrition. Undernutrition means where people are not getting sufficient food. We need some daily intake of energy, protein and all that. So, undernutrition essentially includes those part where people are not getting enough food, and that amount is 820 million. Another part of malnutrition is overnutrition, that is the obesity, that is the overweight. Okay, that is also part of malnutrition, right? And the third important point is people are not having much I would say the effect on the physical effect on the body, but then there are also different deficiencies that is part of the micronutrient malnutrition, right? So, we are getting food, sufficient food, but that food is not rich with micronutrients. So, there are 3 components of malnutrition: undernutrition, overnutrition and micronutrient deficiency. So, this 2 billion people includes all 3 types, of which 820 million people are undernourished. Now, it is the children, it has been found that less than 5 years is a major area of focus. Why? Because if the children they do not get sufficient food, then they get affected even when we become adult, right? So, children below 5 years is a significant I would say the phase of life where people should get, or humans should get sufficient food. So, less than 5 years of children is one of the indicators of the, I would say, the extent of malnutrition. Now, of which 151 million children are stunted. Stunted means obviously the height is not attained as compared to the age. Then 51 million people are wasted. Wasted is a scientific term which includes leanness. Okay? As per the height, we are not getting the width. That is what is called wasting, right? And of course, 17 million people are severely wasted. So, this is an alarming figure as far as the only children below 5 years are concerned. And in many countries like Asia and Africa, malnutrition contributes to loss of 11% GDP. Remember, 1/10 of the GDP goes for the management of diseases and different related problems caused due to malnutrition. So, if we are healthy, our society will be healthy, we will be able to work, we will be able to contribute to the work, contribute to the societal work. So, the country will develop, the society will develop. Okay? So, therefore, the health is wealth, as we always say. If you are not having a good health, it will be very difficult for anybody to contribute to the society. So, therefore, that leads to severe loss of GDP. That means, a lot of money is invested for the management of this malnutrition, whether it is a disease, whether it is any other problems. So, this is what it is. If you see the percentage of stunting, it is among, of course, less than 5 years. So, Asian children, 55% of Asian children below 5 years are affected due to stunting. In Africa, it is 39. Overweight, it is 46. In Africa, it is 25. Wasting, in Asia, it is 69% of the children below 5 years are affected, while in Africa, it is 27. So, look at here, it is not the African countries which are severely affected. If you look at here, Asian countries are having more prevalence of wasting than African countries, even in overweight, which is also not a good indicator. And in stunting also, we are much ahead in terms of, ahead in the sense having more severely affected than Africa. So, scenario in Asia is also not good. Now, this is another map which clearly indicates that there are what has happened is there are different types of malnutrition, of which major is childhood stunting, the part which I have mentioned. Then anemia in adult women. Anemia is a major problem, we all know. If you don't have good source of iron and all that, so especially the women, they get affected. And of course, the overweight in adult women is also a major problem here. So they have mapped these three of these malnutrition part of it, and they tried to find out that which are the countries having only one type of malnutrition, only one type of this problem, which are the countries having either of the two, and which are the countries having either of the three. That is what they have given. So the light color indicates, yellow color indicates that at least a single burden. Burden means here the malnutrition. The orange color indicates double burden. That means there are at least two types of problem together. And the third is the triple burden. I mean, all the three are there. So if you look at the maps, of course, these North American countries and China and here Australia, people are having good economic status. So they have one kind of problem, mostly the overweight, because they have money to, they don't have that much problem. Our country features into a double burden. So basically there are two types of problems are there. And of course, there are some African nations, all the three are there. Now, this is the malnutrition status in India. Now, they have mapped entire district as far as the stunting is concerned. So it is a stunting prevalence in the Indian district during 2015 and 16. And of course, it varies from 12.4% to 65%. So there is a big range of stunting among the children in different districts. Some districts are very good in terms of the health status. Some districts require urgent attention. And of the 604, 239 districts are there. They have a stunting level above 40%. So that is also an alarming scenario, right? And of course, this is the map of different color shades. The deep is the very high prevalence, then of course moderate, and so on and so forth. So if you see our country, the malnutrition is a major problem. So we need to address this. That is the part. Now, since the malnutrition is a major issue, UN has come out with a mandate called Sustainable Development Goals, where in 2015 they initiated this one, and they want to eradicate all forms of malnutrition by 2030. So there is a 15 years goal, 15 years period in which this malnutrition has to be eradicated throughout the world. Now in this, there are 17 goals. Goals means how we can achieve complete elimination of malnutrition, of which goal number 2 deals with hunger and nutrition, the major part which which is there in the sustainable development goal. And of course, then poverty. If you remove poverty, automatically the malnutrition will also reduce, isn't it? If you are to gender equality, because it is the woman who knows how important is the nutrition for her child. So there are different parameters which they have chalked out, and they want to address these 17 goals to eradicate malnutrition. Now, if you see, of the 17 goals, there are two colors, orange and blue, right? Now, the orange color is something, so each goal has some indicators that what are the indicators that will tell whether we have reduced or increased the hunger and nutrition, right? Of which orange is the nutrition and the blue is the non-nutrition indicators, okay? So therefore, in 17 goals, if you see, 12 of the 17 goals has indicators which is related to nutrition. That means nutrition is a core to elimination of malnutrition throughout the world. So that is what is the main important part. Now let us see the loss of GDP. I mentioned about that. India loses around $12 billion of money to address malnutrition. The other countries like Rwanda 50 million, Uganda 145, Bangladesh 700 million, Zambia 186, our neighboring country Pakistan 3 billion, Nigeria 1.5 billion, and DR Congo 100 million US dollars are lost in terms of management of this malnutrition. Now, what is the next? Next is they have calculated if you address this nutrition part of it, so you have to invest definitely. Without investment, nothing will go, right? But the cost benefit ratio is 1:16. So if you invest $1 US dollar in any nutrition related aspect to alleviate malnutrition, the benefit which you will get at the end of the day is $16. So 1:16 is the cost benefit ratio. So therefore it is much economical if we can address this nutrition part of it by any means. Now what are the different means available to address malnutrition? One is definitely fortification. Iodized salt is the classical example, right? We are having less iodine in our food, so therefore we need to get the iodine. So iodine cannot be taken directly, so therefore it is mixed up with salt. So salt is a integral part of every food. So with salt we are getting iodine. That is the mechanism. Another is called medical supplementation. Like in many places, iron pills, calcium pills, vitamin A pills are given. So you need to take pills or capsules for daily requirement of the food. This is the second option. The third option is called the dietary diversification. So we need to get food, a balanced food, which is which provide all the necessary, I would say, the nutrients. But then balanced food or the dietary diversification is not a feasibility in a place which is very remote, which is having poverty, who has no money to buy foods. It cannot work that way. And the fourth option is biofortification. So where you need to enrich whatever is the available food. So with that food, it's like iodized salt. You have to take salt every day. So you take along with the salt your food. So we have to take rice every day or the wheat every day or any food out of it. So if you can enrich that, so therefore along with that you will also get the normal food. So that is called the biofortification. So definition of biofortification is something like, it's a genetic enrichment of crop for nutritional traits, either through breeding method or through transgenic mode, whatever it is. Well, now since I work in maize, so I have to give the world scenario of maize. Around 187 million hectare of land is grown in the world, which produces something around more than 1,000 million tons. In Asia, we grow around 63 million tons, and 1/3 of the world production comes from Asia. So Asia is a major contributor. And maize, along with rice and wheat, provides 30% of the food calories to more than 4.5 billion people in 94 countries. So maize is an important crop. Now, if you look at India, India produces something around 26 million tons from roughly around 9.6 million hectare. And of course, in Africa, maize is a major food. 70% of the maize goes to food chain because they don't take rice or wheat. Maize is their major crop. But in India, it is something around 47% goes to the poultry feed, and then livestock feed goes to 13%. So it is something around 60% goes to animal feed, 13% goes to food, 7% as the processed food. So processed food indicates popcorns and different types of canned products. Nachos is another chips which has come out, which is having maize as a component. And then starch industry is a very prominent in India. We have around 14% and 6% we export. So overall, this is what the distribution, and if you can calculate, out of 26 million tons, 5.2 million tons goes to the food chain. So although in India we all know maize is not a major component of the food, it basically goes to the poultry channel, and through poultry in terms of eggs and meat, especially for the non-vegetarian, we get the nutrition back. And another is, in the northeastern part of India, many places in the hills, many tribal places, maize is still a major component of the food. One-time food goes to maize. So therefore, if it is not as significant as rice and wheat in terms of food, but it is definitely a very, very important component in some part of the country as food, and of course, feed is a major component there. Now, this is what the journey of maize biofortification in India. We all know this is in maize we have the first AICRP established in 1957, and then in 1971 we all know that there are 3 soft opaque to composite Shakti Ratan Proteina was developed. It is rich in lysine and tryptophan. We all know that maize protein is not balanced. It is deficient in 2 essential amino acids, lysine and tryptophan, which our body cannot synthesize. So therefore, we have to take this lysine and tryptophan through diet. Okay, so with that, this OPEC 2, which was soft that time, was released in 1971. Then 1997, the hard endo. Soft is not liked by the farmers because during milling or during processing it is broken down. It is highly infested by insect because of the softness. So we need a hard but then high lysine and tryptophan. So that was there in 1971. We developed a composite called Shakti 1. Then in 1998 was a very significant component in maize program in India. Here, the Asian Maize Biotechnology Network, a program from CIMMYT, was funded to India, and that was actually the initiation of molecular breeding in India. So 1998 was the initial year. In 2001, then the first QPM hybrid, these are composite, Shaktiman 1 was released. In 2004, another hybrid Shaktiman 2. So like that, several QPM hybrids have been released. Now in 2008, since it's a molecular breeding program, as a part of our lecture. So the first thing I would like to emphasize here, the first mass derived product came in 2008 from VPKs. We call it as Vivek QPM9. So it is India's first marker-assisted selection based maize cultivars in India. Then in 2017, we came out at IRI, we came out with 4 marker-assisted selection based products. One is called Pusa Vivek QPM9 improved. We improved this hybrid for Provitamin A, I will mention there. And then 3 QPM hybrids, Pusa HM4 improved, Pusa HM8 improved, Pusa HM9 improved. So these are the 4 mass derived products which have been released. And so this is what is the journey of biofortification. All these products which are in the green boxes, they have been developed through conventional breeding. So we had the QPM germplasm, so they just made crosses, and the hybrid was found evaluated and was found superior. But these 2 orange boxes indicate that these are the mass derived product, and if you see this part, we have in India around 99 hybrids from the public sector, of which 84 are normal, 14 are QPM 1 and Pro A. So the proportion of biofortified hybrids is very low, as possibly the program was started somewhere in 2005-6. And out of 94 conventionally, of this 99, 94 are conventionally bred and 5 are marker-assisted selection bred products. Okay, so far it is available in India. So because all these mass-based programs got initiated somewhere in 2007, 8, 10, and other institutes are working, so it will take some time. So this is what is the journey of biofortification in India. We started in 1971, and the journey still continues. Now I'll go one by one. It is we first work for single biofortification. Single biofortification means we need to improve maize cultivars for single nutritional trait. And in India and around the world, it is the QPM, quality protein maize, which enriches maize for lysine and tryptophan. As mentioned earlier, maize endosperm protein is not rich, and if you see here, the mechanism is something like that. The blue is the normal maize, QPM is the red one. So the recessive gene OPEC2, once you introduce, it reduces the zynes. You see, from 47% of the total protein, 22 it is reduced to more, almost half. Okay, and this zyne is basically deficient in lysine and tryptophan, and because of this, there is a concurrent increase of the glutenin protein. So glutenin protein is rich in lysine and tryptophan. So therefore, one reduction followed by increase of another protein rich, lysine tryptophan rich protein basically is the basic mechanism. Another mechanism is, in the amino acid biosynthesis pathway, once lysine is degraded to further metabolites, there is a gene called LKR, lysine ketoreductase. So if this gene is active, it will more convert lysine into further components, so therefore you will get less lysine. But this OPEC2 gene basically down regulates this particular gene, so therefore the conversion of lysine to further components is reduced. So at the end of the day, you have more pool of lysine in the amino acid biosynthesis pathway, which will further will go to enrich the proteins. So this is what is the mechanism. This is what I was talking about. Vivek QPM9 is the first maize hybrid developed through molecular breeding in India, and they took a hybrid called Vivek Maize Hybrid 9. It was a normal hybrid, and maize being a normal hybrid, and if you want to improve maize hybrid for some trait, any trait, you have to essentially improve the parental lines, right? So once you improve the parental lines, you again cross the improved parental lines, and therefore you will get a hybrid. So we cannot improve directly the hybrid, we have to improve the parents. It is very well understood. And that is what they have taken. They have improved the parental lines of Vivek Maize Hybrid 9, and after it is become QPM, they named it as Vivek QPM 9. Okay, and there is a 30% increase in lysine and 40% increase in tryptophan. So, the value of tryptophan somewhere in the original was 0.6 and here it has become 0.83. So, this is what the first example. Then IRI came out in 2017, another marker-assist selection based product called PUSA HM4 improved, and it was released in CVR through CVRC in 2017, and it has been released for the northwestern plain zone. So, same scenario here, we had original hybrid called HM4 which is released for northwestern plain zone. We improved it for OPEC 2 rather QPM through marker-assisted breeding, and we named it as PUSA HM4 improved. So, HM4 is the original hybrid, PUSA is our institute's brand name, and improved means obviously it has been enhanced. And it has got high lysine 0.9, normally tryptophan is around 0.4, here tryptophan is 0.9, lysine is somewhere around 1.5 to 2%, here it is 3.62. So, that is what it is. We had another hybrid release called PUSA HM8 improved, here the original hybrid is PUSA HM8 and it is released for peninsular zone. Here it is around 1%, it is very high in tryptophan and lysine. 1% of the total amino acid is by tryptophan and around 4% is by lysine. And we had again the third hybrid which is called PUSA HM9 improved. Original hybrid was HM9 and it is for the northeastern plain zone. So, we released 3 hybrids for 3 different agroecological zones of the country. In maize we have 5 agroecological zones, northern hill zones where Jammu, Kashmir, Himachal, Uttarakhand and northeast belong. Then northwestern plain zone, it is Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, the western part of Uttar Pradesh. Then northeastern plain zone is Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal, this is the part. Peninsular zone means all 5 states, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala it is not much, but then and then another is the central west zone. So, where Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, these part actually come here. Well, now we also initiated another program on OPEC 16. Now, QPM essentially means OPEC 2. All over the world it is OPEC 2, the gene is present on chromosome 7. Then in 2000, somewhere in 2000, the first decade, there is another gene got discovered called OPEC 16. This OPEC 16 gene is present on chromosome 8. The OPEC 2 is present on chromosome 7. Okay? And it was found that if you combine both the genes OPEC 2 and OPEC 16 together, both are recessive, so it is double recessive, it causes around average 60% increase in lysine and tryptophan, which you cannot achieve only with OPEC 2. So, the advantage is if you can combine both the genes together, you have more lysine and tryptophan, so it becomes more nutritious. With this we have improved OPEC 2 base 4 hybrid, which was released in India through conventional breeding HQPM 1, 4, 5 and 7. And once we improved the hybrids for OPEC 16, so now we have hybrids for both O2 and O16. Now, look at here, this particular hybrid which is only O2, that is the original one, has got somewhere 0.07 and all of tryptophan, but when you combine both O2 and O16, it is almost a 60 to 70% increase. So, overall there is an 80% average increase of tryptophan and 50% increase in lysine when you combine both O2 and O16. We had to do it through marker-assisted backcross breeding or marker-assisted selection, because since it is a recessive trait, you cannot phenotype large number of progenies. For phenotyping here it is lysine and tryptophan, we have to bank upon the molecular markers which are associated with OPEC 16, also with OPEC 2. So, we combined. So, this is again the first report in, of course, in the country, and after China we are the second country to ever worked on OPEC 16. So, OPEC 2, OPEC 16 is the new dimension of QPM breeding in the world, that if you can increase, if you want to increase lysine and tryptophan, add OPEC 16 along with O2. Now, the next key component is, we all know that OPEC 2 increases softness, which is not desirable. So, next key question is OPEC 16, of course, it increases lysine and tryptophan, but what happens to the softness or the hardness. Now, here it is the HQPM 5, which is only O2. Here it is O2 plus O16. If you look at the kernel ear feature, there is no degree of difference in opaqueness, it is almost same. The picture is not much clear, but then here also we could show that the level of opaqueness doesn't increase on OPEC 16. Rather, we have found that if you add OPEC 16, it was also found it is many times as good as OPEC 2 alone. And then the advantage with OPEC 16 is it does not cause any kind of, it does not induce any kind of opaqueness. So therefore, for all breeders, OPEC 2 introgression is very simple and easy. But then the challenge is to develop a variety which is having high lysine and tryptophan, but hard endosperm. That is a challenge, because you need to accumulate lot of modified genes. Modified genes means which modifies the kernel or the endosperm texture from soft to hard, right. So that is the biggest challenge. So if you work with OPEC 16, you need not to bother about this accumulation of modifiers, right. So OPEC 16 is a very I would say it's a great boon to the breeders. Now we are also working to improve white maize. It has been found that for especially in the northern part, hills and all others, when maize is consumed as food, especially they have to make chapati out of, in winter it's a special thing, makke ki roti. So people normally prefer the white maize. They say white maize produces chapati which is more soft, which is more sweeter, and as compared to yellow maize. That is a conventionally known knowledge. So people are hesitant to accept yellow maize as their food purpose for their own. So many times what farmers do, they will grow yellow maize for selling grains to the market, but they will definitely grow white maize for their own consumptions. Okay. So with this we targeted some white maize hybrids like HM5 and 12. Here we are introgressing both O2 and O16 together. So we are now almost, the session trial is going on. So we have now white maize with both O2 and O16. Earlier white maize was not lysine and tryptophan rich, they are not rich in lysine and tryptophan. So now we have an improved version. We are also working on another trait called provitamin A. Again, as a part of single biofortification, we want to improve for vitamin A. The important part is the maize kernels, we all know vary tremendously for the kernel color. This is a white maize, a light yellow, orange, further light, deep orange and all that, right. And normally we believe more is the intense color, orange or red, more will be the beta carotene. This is something we always feel. And that is what also there in the knowledge of all people who are working in maize, that of course white maize is something where there is no carotenoid, and any yellow maize will be full of vitamin A, and if the color is more, then there is more vitamin A. That is what actually it is. But then when people started profiling the components of carotenoids, we know there are 4 major components: lutein, zeaxanthin, beta carotene and alpha carotene, and of course beta cryptoxanthin, the 5 components. So we first screened the Indian inbreds, and it was found beta carotene constitutes only 3% and beta cryptoxanthin contributes only 9%. Beta cryptoxanthin has got half of the provitamin A activity, beta carotene has got 100% activity, while lutein and zeaxanthin, blue and red, they do not have any vitamin A activity. If you consume, our body cannot convert lutein and zeaxanthin into retinols, right. So but then it works as mostly works as a antioxidant, which is also equally important. But then CIMMYT has come out with that time in somewhere in 2009 or 10, come out with some lines where it was found the beta carotene is 81%. It is, we are talking about the proportion of beta carotene among entire carotenoids. Okay. And then the lutein is reduced to 6%, zeaxanthin is reduced to 8%. So that means your major portions of carotenoids are now beta carotene, right. So that means these germplasm are extremely important. These are the 2 papers came in Science and Nature Genetics, where they could identify that there is a gene called LCYE, lycopene epsilon cyclase, where lycopene is converted into this path where lutein is produced. Okay. Now they found a mutant where LCY is not active. So if this is not active, what will happen? The entire flux will go towards this, and if it goes towards this, then you have a beta carotene. So therefore, if you have a mutant LCY which does not convert this step well, so more beta carotene can be expected. There is another gene which was found that even though beta carotene is produced because of mutation here, the beta carotene produced in high amount is converted into zeaxanthin. So finally, even though there is more beta carotene during synthesis, at the end of the day you are not getting, right, because of the conversion. So they found another mutant gene called CRTRB1, which is which doesn't convert beta carotene well towards further steps. That means, if you can block this pathway here, so you will have more accumulation of beta carotene at the end of the day. So this is what actually happened in the CIMMYT lines, where they had these CRTRB1 genes which blocked the conversion of beta carotene into further components. So we used molecular marker-assisted breeding to transfer this gene and both the genes in our germplasm. So initially we targeted 3 hybrids, Vivek hybrid 27, HM4 and HM8, which was a normal maize, but then beta provitamin A, we actually call provitamin A because it is the component which is finally converted into retinol inside the body, right. It is directly not retinol, it has to be converted into retinol. That is why we call provitamin A, and provitamin A includes beta carotene and half of beta cryptoxanthin. The alpha carotene level is very, very poor. Okay. So that combination gives the value of provitamin A. And here we see once we improved the parental lines, where the blue bar is the original value of provitamin A, it is something around 1 or maximum 2 ppm. But once we introgress CRTRB1 in the hybrid, we got 17 ppm, 12 ppm and 21 ppm. So there is a tremendous increase of provitamin A by introgression of CRTRB1. And the paper was published in 2014 PLOS One. So this is the first example of enrichment of Pro-A in India. Then this year I am happy to share that we have another hybrid called APH27, which was shown earlier, has now been identified for release through AACRP, because for release of these hybrids, these are called essentially derived varieties, isn't it? Because you are only replacing 1 or 2 genes, rest of the genome remains same. So for testing, we have a separate mechanism for testing in AICRP as a standard variety. We call it the IDV, that is independently derived varieties. They take 3 years of testing, and there is a national check. If your variety has to perform well beyond the check, then only it will be released. But in these 2 cases, since you are improving already a released variety, so this improved variety will be treated as essentially derived varieties, right. And for essentially derived varieties, for testing in AICRP, it is a 2 years trial, not 3 years. The reason is, you have already maintained through backcrossing the most of the part of the genome. So there is not much requirement of testing for another additional year, right. And here it will be tested only with the original variety, not the national check, because that is what you have done. You cannot improve the yield potential by introgressing gene of OPEC2 and CRT in the new hybrid. Yield potential should remain same. So we have 2 years of testing in AICRP across crop. ICAR has come out with this guideline. So this has now been identified for release. We call it as APH27. Again, it is derived through marker-assisted selection. Now, so this was the example of the backcross breeding. So we have also followed a method called mass pedigree method. Here mass is MAS, not MASS, right. So marker-assisted selection based pedigree breeding. So what we did, we took elite line which is not having CRTRB1, we took a donor which is having CRTRB1, go to F2, see the segregation. Here you see their segregation is there, 1:2:1. These are homozygote, the star ones are the favorable homozygotes, right. We picked up those ones and derived the lines. So we did only mass, only in F2 for the target gene. We did not look into the background genome. Background genome you have to look into when you are doing backcrossing, right. You have to reconstitute the recurrent parent genome. And these are several lines we have developed which are CRTRB1 positive. Now these are the elite lines which we took in the crossing, whose Pro-A level is very, very low, around I would say 1 to 2 ppm. But here you see the blue bars, it is somewhere around it is 10 actually because of this one. So from 10 to 20 ppm we could achieve because of because of this presence of CRTRB1. And we have developed a very improved hybrid. This is called PUSA Vivek QPM9 improved, which I will discuss later. This is a hybrid, but now but this is in the early maturity group. We have now derived through this mass pedigree method much bigger cobs which is in the late maturity group and whose yield potential is very high, somewhere around 10 to 11 tonnes. Okay? But the Pro-A level is 8 to 10 ppm. Now here I would like to mention one important point. Pro-A is something which degrades during storage, right? Whether it's a golden rice, whether it's a your Pro-A maize, if you store, there will be definite degradation. So earlier you consume, better it is. But we have found that when you measure the Pro-A level in the improved hybrids at harvest, so it is somewhere around 15 to 20 ppm. But after 4 to 5 months of storage, we get 8 to 10 ppm because it is reduced. But then in the original hybrid at the harvest, it is somewhere around 3 to 4 ppm, which after 4 to 5 months storage becomes less than 1. So the comparison is less than 1 versus 8 to 10. So always your hybrids which is improved will provide more Pro-A at any point of time as compared to the traditional varieties. Only thing is, earlier you consume, better it is, you will get more nutrition. We have also, once we came out with our Pro-A hybrid, we gave this maize grains to National Institute of Nutrition, which is an ICMR institute based in Hyderabad. Because finally we have to also prove that how our hybrid is going to do well in humans. So there are two types of studies. One is you can directly feed the humans with Pro-A with a control of non-traditional maize, but it requires a huge funding because you need to convince the humans to take it for a certain period of time and all that. Another shorter version is to go for a Cacco2 cell assay. Cacco2 cell assay something it actually mimics what happens in our stomach or gut. When we consume any food, it will be absorbed and it will go to bloodstream. So that's how they do Cacco2 cell assay, and they found that RD is the recommended dietary allowance. If you can consume 200 grams of maize, so it can give, this Pro-A rich maize gives something around 52 to 64% of the RDA. So daily we require whatever is the recommended dose, 50 to 60% you can get alone from maize if you consume 200 grams of maize. But definitely consuming 200 grams of maize is not a feasibility, but definitely people who take maize as a part of component, if you replace that maize with Pro-A maize, they are going to get more Pro-A, if not the entire amount or even 50% of the amount. So that is how is the target. We need to replace the traditional maize with Pro-A maize, and based on the food, you cannot change the food habit. You cannot change people that okay, you leave rice and take maize, but then you can convince people you are consuming maize in this form. So instead of this, if you consume this maize, you will get more nutrition. So from this human study, we call it Cacco2 cell assay, it was found that our variety is also much better than the traditional variety as far as the absorption of the Pro-A from the grains to the gut is concerned. Okay. So the next is the double biofortification. Double biofortification is something where we are combining two traits together. Here we have combined QPM and provitamin A. So earlier example, single biofortification, we have two sets of examples where only QPM was there, only Pro-A was there, and worldwide there are many QPM hybrids, more than hundreds have been released for QPM, and more than 50 hybrids have been released for Pro-A. In Africa, release of Pro-A hybrid is a major focus, right? But then here we have combined QPM and Pro-A, and what we did, we took that Vivek QPM 9, which is a QPM hybrid released from Almora. In that hybrid we introgressed CRTRB1, right? So our hybrid has got now both O2 and O16, and it was released for Northern Hill Zone and Peninsular Zone, and this is what the cob characteristics. And here you see after 4 months of storage, we have 8 ppm of Pro-A as compared to less than 1 ppm in normal maize. It has got high tryptophan and it has got the high lysine. So this is the first product in the country where both QPM and Pro-A have been combined, and this is perhaps the first example in the world where both QPM and Pro-A have been combined, and that variety has been commercialized. That is what it is. So this was a Vivek hybrid 9. It was mass was carried out to introgress OPEC2 at VPK's Almora, our ICR's institute, and then they named it as Vivek QPM 9. We picked up this hybrid, we introgressed CRTRB1 and retained OPEC2, and this hybrid is now called PUSA Vivek QPM 9 improved. So it is a provitamin A rich Vivek QPM 9 hybrid. So this is also essentially India's first Pro-A rich hybrid released, and it is also essentially the first QPM plus Pro A hybrid released in not only in India but also around the world. We have not found any example where both the genes have been combined and the hybrid has been commercialized. But so far, to improve provitamin A, we have only targeted CRT-RB1 because CRT-RB1 is a major gene. LCY has less effect. But then, if you combine both, so if you want to improve Pro A, only LCY is not a feasibility because it doesn't increase Pro A level. It just increases 1 or 2 ppm. But with CRT, suppose with CRT you can improve from 1 2 ppm to suppose 15 16 ppm, but if you add LCY it can go to 20 plus. Okay? So LCY and CRT is also a good combination. So we introduced both CRT and LCY in the 4 QPM hybrids, and then here we found that after 4 months of storage we have 2.3 ppm and here it is 9.93 ppm. And I am again happy to share with you that now this year this hybrid called APQH7 QPM plus Pro A, which has been identified through ASCRP trial for peninsular zone, and APQH5, which is again a combination of QPM plus Pro A in the medium maturity group, have been identified for release in throughout the country. So these are the second and the third hybrid in the country which has got combination of both QPM and provitamin A after Pusa Vivek QPM9 improved. Now why we have done it? The reason is the first hybrid Pusa Vivek QPM9 improved is an extra early maturing group, and it has got adaptation in the northern hill zone and peninsular zone, right? And here it is a medium maturity group. The moment the maturity increases, your yield potential increases. Normally the early maturing group gives you around 5 tons of per hectare yield. If you go to medium maturity group, it will give you somewhere around 6 to 7 tons per hectare. If you go to late maturity group, it will give you something around 8 and something in the Kharif season, because you are increasing the growth period, especially the vegetative growth, so you get more yield. But then different maturity group has its own importance in the cropping system. If you go to hills, the winter comes so early. If you go to now Almora, it is very intense, cold. So therefore you have to mature your crop before the winter sets in. There medium late is not going to work well. So there you need to have the early maturity groups, right? So based on the different requirement, we need to breed hybrids for different maturity groups. So these are the 2 hybrids which falls in the medium maturity group. Yield potential is higher than the earlier one, and another point is this is across the country, okay, and this is for the peninsular zone. Is it visible to you? Okay, that's great. What happens? The connection must be here. there is a bird called Vanaraja. Vanaraja is a backyard poultry bird which is very famous. Each and every district they have distributed. So the whole principle is a farmer will grow his crops and all that, but then if they keep this kind of chicken in their, in their houses, so they will continue to give eggs, especially among the non-vegetarians, so which is more nutritious, which is much bigger in size. So we tested that hybrid, our Proa hybrid, which is also rich in QPM, along with conventionally available hybrids. So here we found this one. This is Vivek hybrid 9, which is a normal hybrid. So we have given 5 diets. So we had a set of chickens in each replications, and each of them were fed with different diets, right, for a certain period of time. And 1 is basically a normal diet, 2 is also normal diet, the third diet was having both QPM and provitamin A, and the fourth diet is only QPM, and fifth diet is available in the market. Now, in poultry, 2 basic parameters are looked into. One is called body weight gain. For the meat purpose, what they want in a shorter period of time, normally 6 weeks, 42 days, they will cull the chicken for meat, right. So within 42 days, if a chicken gets more weight, it is more profitable to the farmer. So body weight gain is an indicator. Another indicator is feed conversion ratio. Feed conversion ratio is something where how much less feed is required to attain a certain body weight gain. So there are 2 chickens, one requires 1 kg, another requires 800 grams. So you are giving less feed, more profit. So lesser the feed conversion ratio, better it is. Higher the body weight gain, better it is. Clear? Now you look at here, we have plotted this. Now QPM plus Proa hybrid, the red one is the body weight gain. This body weight gain achieved is much higher than the normal maize, but equal to the QPM maize. But if you see the feed conversion ratio, FCR, it is the least among QPM. These are the 2, this is QPM, this is normal, this is also normal. So therefore, this combination, if you feed the chickens, that is Vanaraja, with our varieties, our hybrid, that is QPM plus Proa, you get higher body weight gain with less feed. So which is much more economical for a poultry farmer. You have to understand the aspect of poultry farmer also. We normally, farmer means we think we will grow rice, wheat and maize, but a poultry farmer is also a farmer. For him or her, profit is also equally important, isn't it? So therefore, he has to give less input, that is less feed, to attain similar body weight gain. So in both humans as well as in poultry, we could demonstrate that our QPM plus Proa hybrid is much better than even QPM hybrids and also the normal hybrids which are available in the market. Now another important point, body weight gain and feed conversion ratio, definitely you have seen it. Egg is also always said, egg is also the cheapest source of nutritious food with 3 to 4 rupees. If one consumer egg a day, he or she will get much of a nutrition. Now the important point is when chicken is fed with, normally the poultry diet is composed of 60% maize, 40% soybean. Maize gives starch or the carbohydrate or the energy. The soybean diet provides the more protein and oil. So you require 3 major components for any food or feed we consume. So 60% maize provides energy, that is carbohydrate, soybean provides oil as well as protein. These are the 3 different sources of energy, right? We all know that. So that's how the diet is composed. Now here we have also found if a maize which is rich in provitamin A, if it is fed to the chicken, then the more accumulation of Proa will be there in the egg yolk. So here I don't know whether it's clear. Okay, this is a white maize. Now this is a white, chicken fed with white maize. So the egg yolk is also white. Here it is yellowish, here it is orangish, here it is again yellowish. Now this Proa has got, this is the Proa rich one, 0.46 as compared to 0.13, and these are the normal standard yellow maize. So therefore, the pigmentation or the Proa accumulation in the egg yolk will be also more if the chicken is fed with your Proa maize. So it is not only the meat quality or the advantage part of it, but also the egg quality gets enhanced. Another important point is for an international market, when a chicken is fed with corn, the pigment is accumulated in the beak and also in the, of course, in the legs and also on the skins. You see here is a white maize versus yellow maize, not a Pro-A, just white versus yellow. The white maize fed chicken has got white skin, while the yellow maize fed chicken has got yellow skin. Yellow skin is a better acceptability in the international market. I have not shown a slide, but I just would like to mention that fat deposition in the flesh is also equally important. Now we have become very health conscious. We require meat who are the non-vegetarian without fat, right? So it has also been found in another experiment using our own Pro-A hybrid that the fat accumulation is in the chicken meat is much less than the traditional maize. So that means this Pro-A maize has got multi-dimensional advantages even in the poultry as well as in humans. And of course, if a human consumes this Pro-A rich maize, what happens? It's an indirect mode of nutrition through maize. We are not consuming maize daily, but definitely, especially the non-vegetarians, if you consume an egg daily, so that will also gives the nutrition back to humans. We are also working on another trait called vitamin E. Vitamin E is very, very important for, especially for the neurological functions. So if normally what happens in the old age when the neuron starts getting degenerated, so that time the supplementation of the vitamin E is also equally very important. So old age persons will show normally the neuron related problems, and essentially that starts with the deficiency of vitamin E. So there in maize is among crops, soybean is the first important crops where it has got the richest source of vitamin E, tocopherol. The scientific name of vitamin E is tocopherol, right? And then after maize, after soybean, it is maize where the tocopherol accumulation is much more than other crops there. But the problem is the tocopherol is composed of 4 components: alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Now 80% of the total tocopherol is composed by gamma tocopherol here, right? And alpha tocopherol is only 10%. But if you consume, our body receptors absorbs alpha tocopherol much than gamma tocopherol. So essentially what happens, although gamma tocopherol is more, but then it is not absorbed to the extent as that of alpha tocopherol. So the point is, if you can increase alpha tocopherol, you can increase the vitamin E content of the maize, and that will be easily absorbed in the body. So there is a gene called VT4. So VT4 basically enhances the conversion of alpha tocopherol to gamma tocopherol to alpha tocopherol. This is a mutant gene. Normal gene, the wild type gene doesn't convert well. The mutant gene converts very efficiently, and you see from 7 to 10 microgram per gram of alpha tocopherol can be increased to 20, almost like double to triple, 2 to 3-fold if you can introgress VT4. So that is what is the genetic mechanism. So we introgress this gene through marker selection in already QPM and Pro-A rich background, which we already discussed. Now we have hybrids where you see here this is the alpha tocopherol. The blue line is having around 7 to 8. Our improved one is somewhere around 16 to 18, 2-fold increase in vitamin E because we have introgressed VT4. Now the traditional hybrid, you go we call it Pro vitamin E, so we call it Pro E. It is around 6 to 10 ppm. Pro A is 1 to 2 ppm. Lysine is 0.2 to 0.25% in floor. Tryptophan is 0.03 to 0.04. We have now hybrids where Pro A is 16, Pro E is 16, Pro A is somewhere around 11 to 12, lysine is 0.37, tryptophan is 0.08. So everywhere there is almost 2 to 3-fold increase of lysine, tryptophan, provitamin A and vitamin E we have achieved in a single genetic background. And this is the first example. We are coming out with the article now, it is almost ready, we are going to communicate. This will be the first article where all the 4 traits have been combined through marker-assisted backcross breeding. Again, I am repeating, it is possible because we could track the genes through marker-assisted selection. And another important point is, even though you keep on adding every time, you have to track each and every gene because your donor is not having all the genes there. So you have to do marker-assisted selection not only for the last trait which you are introgressing, but all the traits which you are also been already improved, because your last donor may not have the favorable alleles for those genes. So that's how we have now new set of hybrids which are rich in protein quality, vitamin A and vitamin E. We are also working on iron and zinc, but then iron and zinc in maize, it is a big challenge. It is governed by minor genes. There is no major genes. And another important point is it is having high gene to E, the genotype into environment interaction. So therefore, to develop a stable high iron zinc maize is a challenge. So there is an alternate route which is to reduce the phytic acid. In maize or any cereals, phytic acid is a component which is a negatively charged, and it will chelate the positively charged iron like iron, zinc, calciums. So your maize may have high iron and zinc, but it is not bioavailable, because once you consume it in the stomach, in the gut, human gut, the iron zinc is in the bound form with phytic acids, right? But then if you reduce the phytic acids, what will happen? You have more bioavailable iron and zinc. So remember, try to understand, there are two maize varieties, both have 30 ppm of iron and zinc, but here the phytic acid is more. So here it is less bioavailable, here phytic acid is less. So you have more bioavailable iron and zinc. So that's how we are targeting. So there are 3 mutants, and it's a major gene. If you integrate the mutants, you will have a drastic reduction of phytic acids. LPA1 is there, LPA2 is there, and LPA3 is there. So we are working on LPA1 and 2, and the lines are almost ready. So our target is to develop low phytic acid maize, which will essentially increase the bioavailability of iron and zinc. And here another important point is phytic acid is equally very important for the plant purpose. So while germinating, phytic acid is a major source of energy, number 1. Number 2, it is involved in host pathogen interactions. If you reduce the phytic acid too much, then what will happen? It will become very susceptible to disease and all. So you are normally what happens, 90% of the entire phosphorus in the plant system is phytic acid in the seed aspect. So we are trying to reduce from 90% to 60 to 70%, not below 50%. So if you reduce it below 50%, because you will have segregants, some of the segregants will have less than 50% of phytic acid. So it is like this, you have very bioavailable iron, but the plant won't survive, right? So there is a balance is important to have moderately low phytic acid, thereby increasing the iron and zinc. You cannot reduce the phytic acid drastically to a level of 20-30%, plant won't survive because of poor plant host pathogen interactions. Defense mechanism will be compromised. So these are the ones, this is the calculations. Now you see, direct approach. Normally for say iron or zinc, we have around 30 ppm of iron and zinc on an average available. We call it as baseline. So whenever you start a program, you have to see what is the available variations in the system. So normally it is 30. Now our target is in iron is 60 ppm. So it has to be doubled to have the recommended dietary allowance. Now what happens, once you consume it, since the phytic acid is very high, the bioavailability of iron in human gut is only 5%. So basically you are getting only 3 ppm of iron only, even though you increase to 60 ppm. Now increase from 30 to 60 is a challenge, I have mentioned, because it is governed by many genes, lot of QTLs are there. And second important point is it is highly governed by gene to E, the soil and other aspect plays a very important role. Now indirect approach is something where your baseline is 30 ppm. If you integrate LPA1 and 2, and if you reduce the phytic acid by 50 to 60%, what will happen? You are increasing bioavailability from 5% to 10%, because bioavailability is dependent on phytic acid. If you reduce the phytic acid by half, you will increase the bioavailability by double. So here we are getting 3 ppm, again the same, with exactly the same baseline, but just introducing LPA1 and 2. This is what is the mechanism. But then if you can increase both iron zinc together with phytic acid, that is the best combination. So we are we have targeted our QPM plus Pro-A hybrids, which we have developed in our program, and some of the QPM hybrids which are in the early medium maturity group with different agroclimatic adaptation, where we are ready with phytic acid lines. We are going to test the hybrids. So this will be, and again these are not in the normal background, this is again in the already nutritionally rich background. So therefore you will get lysine, tryptophan, Pro-A, and also high bioavailability of iron and zinc. So that is what is our target. We are also working on sweet corn. We have demonstrated our sweet corn in nearby farmers field, and we have released recently in 2018 one sweet corn, call it as Pusa Super Sweet Corn 1. It is for the 4 zones: northern hill zones, northwestern plain zones, and northeastern plain zone and peninsular zone. But this hybrid is because of a gene called Shrunken2, which is a recessive gene. But this hybrid is bred through conventional means. We have not used any Marquez selection program. We have just made lines, crosses, and shown it. Why I am showing it, I will explain in the next slide. Another news is, now this year we have also identified one hybrid called ASKH1. It has been identified for release in the recently held workshop in 2019. So we have submitted the release proposal, and these are for these states. Again, this hybrid is also bred through conventional means. We had the SH2 based lines, we made crosses which was heterotic, we promoted it. So these 2 hybrids had to go through 3 years of testing, because it is an IDV, independently derived varieties, right. Now we have taken this ASKH1, which is identified parent 16 and 17, we introgressed the gene CRTRB1 and OPEC2 in the parental lines. So we are going to improve the sweet corn for nutritional trait. Now this is the original line, this is the Pro and QPM lines. You see the silk color remains same, the tussle color remains same, this is the original crop, these are the improved crop, this is the original crop, these are the improved. So feature wise it is almost similar. Well, now this is the original hybrid, this is the improved hybrid. Here we found, so we have Pro A at around 3 ppm. Here we had tested 3 versions. Normally in the station trial we have to test a lot of versions. One version only you have to finally will lead to release, isn't it? So in our station trial we tested 3. We called it as A, B, and C. Now on an average there was a 5-fold increase of Pro A. There was almost 2-fold increase of lysine, and of course almost around 2-fold increase of tryptophan. So this is again the first report of a sweet corn which has been improved for nutritional quality. Sweet corn is basically harvested somewhere around 20 to 22 days after pollination in the green stage. Don't think that it is dried, then it is boiled in water and it will give like this. No, whatever sweet corn we get, it is at the green stage. And there is also a stage, if you harvest little late, your sugar will be converted into starch. Starch is no longer sweet. So, here the greatest advantage is, as mentioned, the Pro A is degraded during storage, and the degradation is mainly due to various reasons. One of the major reason is the temperature, right. So once you harvest a grain, you have to keep it, where farmer will keep, he will put it in a gunny bag and try to put in some cooler place like this classroom, right, where in winter temperature will be fine, but in summer it will be very high, 35 to 40 degree, which will cause degradation. But in sweet corn what happens, either you directly consume because it is a perishable item, or you freeze it to use it as a frozen sweet corn later on. So in the cool temperature, again the degradation of the Pro A will be much less. So here of course lysine tryptophan does not degrade over period, whether heat or anything, it has got no effect, but it is the Pro A. So that is how we have developed this. So this is more advantageous. We are also working on baby corn, where TB1 is there. TB1 is a gene called teosinte branch 1. It is responsible for prolificacy in maize. In baby corn, we need more baby corn to be harvested, so it is more economical. So we are transferring through Marquez selection TB1 from teosinte to maize. This is the F1 here. You see, it is in between maize and teosinte, and these are the backcross derived maize here, where TB1 gene is there. It is almost same, and the reason is this. What happens in normal maize, there is a TB1 gene. In the upstream there is a transposable element is there called hopscotch. This causes the higher expression of TB1. So high expression of TB1 means the low prolificacy. In teosinte this hopscotch is missing. So the TB1 is expressed in a lower expression, because TB1 basically acts as a suppressor for more years, right. So that is why we are now targeting TB1 from teosinte we are in BC to F2 stage right now in the field. Now you must have heard somebody in maize, there is a germplasm called Sikkim primitive. Sikkim primitive is a germplasm where in a traditional maize you have 1 year, here you have 5 years, and this is a very good trait for baby corn. So we are also trying to, we have done the genetics of this particular prolificacy. We have published in Plant Breeding, and we are now developed mapping populations to identify which gene is responsible for prolificacy to this extent, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is in Delhi condition. If you go to Sikkim, the actual place, it gives you 7 to 9. Because it is highly dependent on environment also. But even in Delhi condition, we have 1 versus 5. So it is also very, very important. So we are going to initiate a mass program here. So these are some of the examples where we are working with QPM, with O2, then O2 plus O16. ProA, we are working with CRT, again with both. Then we have combined ProA with low phytate with vitamin E. We are also working on iron zinc for LPA as mentioned. We have also improved sweet corn for ProA, vitamin E and A also. So these are some of the examples. So we have now at IRI are ready with 35 hybrids in the elite genetic background, which are, which are enriched with nutrients. So 4 of the hybrids have been now released. 3 have been identified, 7 hybrids from IRI, which has been bred through marker-assisted backcross breeding, have now been either released or identified through AICRP system. So this is what is in the nutshell, and a very important message. So far we discussed about quality, quality, quality and quality, and the point is, does it have less yield? No farmer will ever grow a maize variety or any variety if it is less yielding than normal maize. So we once we developed these hybrids, we tested in our AICRP trial, and this is the AICRP data. So the first QPM hybrids, which is developed through MAS, which is called HM4, 8 and 9, it's QPM version. So blue bar is the original hybrid, red bar is the improved hybrid. And these are the zones: Northwestern Plain Zone, Peninsular Zone and Northeastern Plain Zone, and for 2 years continuously, Kharif 2014 and 15. More than 35 locations data suggest that these are, whether it is high or low, but this is statistically non-significant. Okay? So the improved hybrid is as good as good as their normal counterpart in terms of yield. So therefore, none of the trait which we are dealing with has got per se yield penalty. You may argue, sir, we have a hybrid from somebody which is much higher yielding than your hybrid. That may be true, but then if you can breed for these trait in a proper genetic background, you can also have your own hybrid which is as high yielding as that one, right? And another comparison comes sometime that I have mentioned that out of 99, 94 are the conventionally bred hybrid. Now 5 is only mass derived hybrids, isn't it? In all over India, more than 100 breeders are working on conventional breed on normal maize. Only 10, 12 breeders are working on quality. So the extent of breeding which has gone into the improvement of the germplasm is much less than in quality than in the normal maize, right? But here it proves in the same genetic background there is no yield penalty. That is the greatest message. So if you can put these genes in the right genetic background, you can also develop your own hybrid which may be as high yielding as this. But then why we chose this path of backcross breeding? It's a short term goal. To develop independent hybrid, you need to broaden the germplasm. The germplasm donors which we got for ProA, it is only 2 and 3 lines which we got from CIMMYT and Harvest Plus. So now our major target was to introduce that gene into already available background. Now we have a second set of line where we have now developed through pedigree breeding, but using mass, our new lines. And that's what I have shown. Our new hybrid is much better than the hybrids there. So this is how it is going on. So the message of IRI's ProA hybrid, which is the first in the country, was flashed in Indian Express with the title IRI breeds nutrient rich maize hybrid. So this is the last year's hybrid. Our head Dr. A.K. Singh is here. 2 of the colleagues, Dr. Vignesh, he has worked in his PhD program this for ProA enrichment. The hybrid is now released. Dr. Rajkumar is there. He is now a colleague here, both of them. In his program, he has developed hybrid which is having both LCYE, CRT and O2 positive, and 2 of its from his thesis. 2 of the hybrids have been now identified from Dr. Vignesh's thesis program. 2 of the hybrids have been now, one have been identified, another have been released. Dr. Prasanna, who was earlier maize breeder and geneticist here, he was leading the program. Now he is the director global maize program. So he was also there with us during the harvest time. Another important message I want to just convey to you, that because of the QPM in 2000, Dr. Wassel and Villegas, they were the 2. Dr. Wassel is the QPM breeder, father of QPM. Dr. Villegas was the biochemist. That time no mass was there. So, they had to rely upon breeding as well as the sample was sent to lab. They had to estimate lysine and tryptophan. That's how they were, a lot of QPM varieties have been developed, and there are a lot of improvement in Africa, China based on the QPM products. So, they were awarded with the World Food Prize. World Food Prize is as good as a Nobel Prize in agriculture. So, and then in 2016, Andrade, Mangwawa, Low and Buis were given a World Food Prize for this biofortified crops which they have developed. Okay. So, these are the two groups who have been given for developing biofortified crops around the world. But then development is one part, another part, important part is the policy, right. So, here in 2017, Adesina was given, who is from Nigeria, for for what? He was a president of African Development Bank, and it reads like has a champion of biofortification for many years and was crucial for the adoption and expansion of the biofortified crop in his native Nigeria when he led his country's agricultural ministry. So, policy, green revolution did not happen only because of the scientists, it all happened also with the strong government support, right. That was one of the reasons. So, we may have a lot of biofortified crops, but then it is the policy which will gradually, our duty as a scientist is to convince the policymakers that look, we have a hybrid which is as high yielding as your normal hybrid. So, if we can promote this, we can in one shot we can alleviate the greatest malnutrition. Greatest problem of malnutrition. Then again Haddad and Nabarro, they were also given the work for their policy related issues. So, therefore, and again all are World Food Prize, remember. So, they worked, two groups of people work on the development, two groups of people worked on the promotion of adoption of these biofortified varieties in different parts of the country, which is also equally very important. Now, India in 2017 has come out with National Nutrition Strategy, where it says that we can achieve nutritional security. Remember another thing, our goal was earlier was food security. We need to have food to feed our nation. The goal has now changed from food security to food and nutritional security. So, we have to develop not only high yielding food, it has to be nutritious also, right. So, that is what it says, that to achieve nutritional security we need food, then income, livelihood, health, and of course, drinking water and sanitation is also equally important. So, our nutrition national nutrition strategy are in place. ICAR is playing very active role in promotion of this biofortified varieties. Now, in some other lecture I am sure you will learn that crop like rice, wheat, maize, pearl millet, brassica, then soybean, then in vegetables you have you have cauliflower, sweet potato, all these things have now been biofortified for iron, zinc, provitamin A or for some other work. So, the important is development, awareness is also equally important, policy is also equally important. These three components can effectively lead to malnutrition free India, which is now country's main slogan. With this, I would like to thank my organization, Indian Council of Agriculture Research, the organization I work for. I would like to thank Director IRI New Delhi, Joint Director Research, Dr. A.K. Singh, and then he is also the head division of genetics for his tremendous support. Thanks to IMR. IMR is the Indian Institute of Maize Research. Now it is in Ludhiana. It is a nodal center for maize research in India. So we also work in collaboration with them. Then CCA Uchani, VPKS Almora, all AICRP centers. Thanks to different funding agencies like CRPs, DBT, DST, CIMIT, and then they provided germplasm. From China we got germplasm OPEC 16. And Dr. Vignesh and Dr. Rajkumar are my colleague. They are the pillar of this strength to this program. Thanks to all the collaborators, technical staff, students and research fellows. This is a small team. I would like to say here, all the work can be done only with the help of students like you who have done an excellent work as a PhD student or as a senior research fellow or research associates in different projects. So it is a kind of a big teamwork where starting from director, council level, then our scientist, head, all of us are part of this program. With this, I would like to thank each one of you for your patient hearing. Thank you so much. So, any questions, queries you have? You can ask any questions, don't worry. I have not given the how it is to be done. I think it has been told in some other course. My only point was to explain to you what we are doing and where we stand and what are the products we are ready with. This is what it is. Yeah.
Almost about nutritional quality. Then what about pest and diseases? These are the main factors affecting the yield of maize.
Yes, you are right. Actually, I mean, nowadays fall armyworm is a major problem. Okay, who is working in maize? They might be knowing there is a pest which is exotic pest has now invaded India, and it is damaging to a great extent. But then, as far as the breeding is concerned, it is an integral part whenever we develop a line. If that line does not show any disease and insect incidents, anyhow, once you put your entry in AICRP, that will be screened, and it will be only released if it is having sufficient level of resistance and tolerance. But I do agree that the targeted breeding program is not to the extent for these traits as it has been there in quality. Primarily because here genes are much more characterized. We have a major gene, it is easy to transfer. On the other hand, not much genetics have gone into this to understand, I mean, what are the genetic, I would say, makeup of the germplasm showing tolerance and all. But then, of course, in future it is one of the urgency that we should also start working on genomics assisted breeding or any aspect of it using targeted breeding approach, where we should target QTLs or loci to transfer it. But all over India, all over the world, if it is I would say if it is genomics assisted breeding, major focus has been in quality, but then there are also institutes which are also working in these traits as well.
So because I have worked on maize only in MSc for
Okay.
the genetics of resistant to Fusarium stock rot.
Fusarium stock rot, okay.
I couldn't get even a single inbreed with moderate resistance or resistance.
Yeah, exactly. So basically the kind of variations which we have is also lacking in many of the traits. So until and unless we have a tolerant line or resistant line, definitely you cannot transfer it. But also it is equally important to screen for large set of lines. Until we screen a whole lot of germplasm, you won't be able to get a donor source, and once you get a donor, then you can start a breeding program, right? So yeah, that is something which we all maize breeder has to start with.
Sir, in many of slides I had seen that the QPM maize is filled up to the tip of the cob.
Tip of the cob, okay.
But the variety from which it is derived, or this one, it is not filled up to the tip.
It is only in Vivek QPM 9 examples.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, the original hybrid has this problem of tip filling, but once we develop new lines, new combinations, people have selected those lines which are having tip filled. So 15 to 20% or 10 to 15% gain you can get in yield by filling the tips. Okay, it is many times it's a genetic trait. So since we had a new set of segregants, so as a breeder, don't think always once you are working with EDV, it should be 100% same. You have the option to select much better than the original hybrid. It could be any trait. That's what they have done.
It's nothing to do with the QPM.
It is nothing to do with the QPM. It's only a variant which they got and they selected.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Right. Like Weakville 2 was one of the parents, male parents of Vivek QPM 9. Once we converted into Pro A version for our IRI product, we deliberately selected a line which is having white silk. The original one is having pigmented silk. So this will help in farmers field, because you see, once a seed is mixed up, you don't know whether it's a original Vivek QPM 9 or improved. So these sort of things are also very important. If you have some marker, whether pigment is a major easy marker, isn't it? Suppose there is a pigment in the silk and not pigment in the silk, you can identify it is which of the line, whether it's only QPM or QPM plus Pro A. So we did that also. So these are some of the innovations you can always do during breeding, during the process of selection.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, how much is the difference between cost of cultivation in both the types of maize?
Cost of cultivation remains same as that of traditional maize. There is nothing to do with, it is as good as normal maize. If you give seed to farmers, it will cost as same as any traditional varieties. So there is no question of any kind of difference in cost of cultivation. That is the advantage. With the same cost of cultivation, you are getting more nutrition.
Okay,
Any question? Yeah, he has a question.
Sir, what is the current status of haploid inducer lines in India?
Okay, you are working in maize? Okay, so nowadays in maize, most of them, all multinational companies, they want to accelerate the breeding cycle. I was telling about that during discussions, isn't it? So they have shifted completely towards DH productions. Okay, they develop their lines in 1 or 2 seasons, and they have a big facility in Bangalore and some other places, Hyderabad and all that. In public sector organization, it is 100% it is based on conventional way of breeding, and CIMIT has now come out with a, they have also started producing lot of DH line from their Mexico, from their different parts, whether it's Mexico or in Kenya and all that. What happens is, in India, it is only few institutes like VPK, Almora, they have started working. We at IRI have started working on Marquesas selection, using Marquesas selection to develop our own inducer line. CIMIT has provided inducer line, which is actual inducer line is called stock 6, which is a temperate background. It doesn't work well here. So CIMIT has tropicalized. They call it as tail, tropically adapted inducer line. Tail 1, tail 2, they have given names. And so we are also developing our own tail lines. And but then so far, the maize breeding program by public sector is 100% based on conventional way of line derivation. But in next 3 to 5 years, I am sure now more and more institute have started working, so they will come out with the DH lines. Almora is one of the institute where they have developed in a small scale many of the DH lines using the inducer lines. So you can integrate, another point, if you can integrate DH with mass, then also it's very, very, that is also another way of shortening little bit. Yeah, please.
So the mutated lines for provitamin A and vitamin E, were they developed here, or were they targeted mutations, or were they donors from somewhere?
No, it's a natural mutation which was found in germplasm somewhere. So CIMIT picked it up and they developed in their own line. So they gave us the donor. We use their donor as a line. As far as vitamin E is concerned, we found that these gene, favorable gene, is also present in Indian germplasm. Right. So it is up to you to choose which of the germplasm you want to. It is also available in CIMIT germplasm also. Only thing you have to screen for the polymorphism in the gene. So, but for ProA it is completely exotic. But for vitamin E, we have both indigenous and exotic lines having the favorable allele.
Sir, multicolored grains, kernel color will be there now in maize.
Okay. Yes, we have also initiated this program. Multicolored grain is now a new concept coming up. There you must have seen, of course, we all have seen yellow and white maize. We have also seen purple maize, red maize and all that. Some of the photographs I will show in my next lecture. This is because of the anthocyanin. Anthocyanin production is more in that. There are there's a big biosynthesis pathways there, which I will mention. There are some major genes. So more the anthocyanin, more is the antioxidant. More the antioxidant, better it is. What is the function of antioxidant? To remove the free radicals produced in the body. Okay. So another way of concept is to produce anthocyanin or the black in Mexico it is called blue maize. Because if you harvest, then the purpleness is so deep, it will look like a blue. So they call it as a blue maize. So blue maize is a very, very important commodity, specialized commodity in Mexico also, where maize is an important component. So here also, once we develop few, colored maize, we can also promote it considering the antioxidant functions, and people can have it. Why not?
Is having any nutritional benefits?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling. It's antioxidant. So more antioxidant means it is good for your health, right? But possibly you cannot give black maize to poultry because the egg yolk will have the possibility to become black, which we may not like it. I mean, it's all about eye, Our whole aspect is to eye and tongue. So that is what it is. Yet it has to also look good. But then with if you can convince people that okay, this is more nutritious, you can have it.
Sir, one more question, that in IRI work is going on oil content improvement in maize. If we have other alternatives, why we need to go for oil content improvement in maize?
Okay, since it is we are at the very early stage of backcrossing, I did not show it. We are also working to enhance oil content in maize. Oil content in maize, oil is more deposited in embryo, or in the endosperm it is less. So, if you can select a line which is having high embryo, you like to have more oil. Now, why we want to increase oil content? She is telling that other available sources are there. Our objective is this: oil oil increases bioavailability of provitamin A, also vitamin E, right? So, if you can increase oil in this pro A and vitamin E background, so whatever is there 18 ppm, 15 ppm, 10 ppm, if you with high oil, it will increase the bioavailability. You will get more absorption than this. So, that is how we are trying to do it. And then another is corn oil is also nowadays coming as a specialized product. It is always suggested you should change the cooking oil in every month. You take this brand, that brand, different sources, because every oil has its different fatty acid composition. Corn oil is said to be one of the very, very important and good balance of fatty acid. So, in US, corn oil is one of the important component of their food chain. So, in India also in different stores also we can get corn oil. So, that is one part, but our major objective is to increase oil in this pro A and vitamin E background, so that the bioavailability is increased. That is why.
Sir, how much generations we can take for speed breeding in case of maize? That means
No experiment has been done in as far as speed breeding is concerned in maize, because normally it has been experimented with crop like rice, wheat, pulses, chickpea and all that, barley also, whose height is short, you can grow it in pots. Maize height is very tall, isn't it? So, you need to have a big chambers and all. One need to experiment with maize, but then